Okay, we're here with Kevin Davis of Kevin Davis Insurance Services in our bonus content following up to our Older Condos webinar, the one that addressed the issues having to do with the Champlain Tower South collapse. So, Kevin, as an insurance expert, tell us, what is HO6 or renter's insurance?
Sure. The HO6 is, I own a condominium unit. I would buy HO6. Right now in my home, I have a regular homeowner's policy that picks up the property, the liability, the contents itself, what's inside. HO6 policy does it for condominium owners. So you either have an HO6 if you're owner or just a regular renter's policy, okay, which is another name. But again, if you live in a community association, you want to make sure you have coverage for the contents itself, for the things inside, and yes, for all the things of value that you think that belongs to you, as opposed to what belongs to the association. There's a separation between what belongs to the association and what belongs to you yourself. You want to provide the coverage for what's yours, so that if something happens to any of the property, you have coverage for it.
Got it. So the association maintains the coverage for association stuff, and then you maintain coverage for your stuff with the HO6. That's where they come together.
Exactly. So some HOA policies have walls inside everything. Walls in, and then you have some that may cover some of the fixtures. All HO policies cover different things. But your individual ones, you want to make sure that you cover the things that important to you. And again, work with your insurance agent to say, okay, we want to make sure there's no gap in the coverage there between what the HOA is covering and what we're covering in the HO6 policy.
Got it. Let's talk about community associations. Is it typical that most owners will have HO6 policies, and is it possible for the association to require them to have HO6 policies so that you do have a match between the association covering the common areas and the owners covering their inside stuff?
Sure. Every HOA would love for every owner to have their own policy. I mean, there's nothing can be better if every HOA and condo out there says, we force you to have your own policy. But right now, they can't do it. Now, I think there's certain laws in Florida that says you have to have a HO6 policy or a renter's policy if you live in a community association in Florida. They had it. I don't know if it's still there. You can also you can put it into governing documents and say, we want everybody to have an HO6 policy or renter's policy. Now, here's the problem. If you don't enforce it, okay, then what happens? See, you're back to taking on more responsibility as a board of directors. As a board of directors, if you put something in the documents, it's your job to enforce it, or else somewhere along the line will come back and punch you. So be careful of what you wish for, and especially if it's not enforceable. So don't start something you can't really follow through on.
Okay. You keep talking about the interface between all these different types of insurance. And so I'm glad we have this conversation today. And let's deal with the question of, as a board member, is there something else that they need, like their own personal liability policy? Will that assist?
Sure. I would say this: you have a liability policy that's covered as part of your homeowner's policy, the one of your personal homeowner's policy. Now, the question is what limit it could be. It could be a low limit, 100,000, $250,000. Now, you may say that, well, I want a personal umbrella policy that protects me, so that now if I'm sued for something, if somebody enters my premises and all of a sudden it slips and falls or damage in some way, and they hold me responsible, and all of a sudden that cost there is worth a lot more money than I have. Okay, more money than my association, not my association, my personal policy has. Do I have enough limit available? So you buy your own personal umbrella policy that goes over top of your own liability policy. And you do the same for your car, for example. You may have a 100, 300,000 on your car, but you may say, well, you know what? I live in LA. That's not enough. So I may put a personal umbrella on top of it, so it covers my personal liability, so that if things happen, I will be protected for higher limits.
Got it. Does that help you as a board member? So you're supplementing association insurance with your own insurance.
Now, that's a good question. If you look at your personal insurance policy, you're talking about personal injury and personal injury, you're talking about bodily injury and property damage. Okay, you're talking about the things that covered under the general liability policy. So if somebody slips and falls in your area, or there's property damage done to somebody around you, that's what we're talking about. When you are a board member, now you're acting as a professional. You're acting as something outside of your personal coverage around you. You could have coverage, but I would not rely upon it. So now all of a sudden, if you're sued for $5 million because you are a board member of Champagne Towers, okay, and you happen to be the only one that's still around, and they're naming you because you're the only one to do it, there's no coverage left anywhere else, but you can go to your personal liability policy and say, well, I'm gonna put them on notice, okay? All you do is put them on notice and hope they come back to you and say, yes, we'll cover it. But it's not in you didn't do anything on a personal level. It's only as a board member operating, not only, but as a board member on behalf of the corporation. So it's a tricky thing there. Again, the line insurance are really right there to say, this covers for this covers you for that.
Yeah, well, I understand that. And I think that's going to be guiding a lot of our conversation here, the line on which side you are. And it sounds like what I'm hearing, that as a homeowner, if someone comes in and slips on something in my kitchen, that's on me. Mm-hmm. And if I want more coverage, then I can have that personal umbrella policy. But once I become a board member, then if they slip and fall in my kitchen, again, that's on me. But as a board member, that's the type of decisions that are covered by D&O. That's how those things kind of touch.
Or general liability. It could cover general liability because slip and fall is general liability. So bodily injury, property damage to the general liability. Now, here comes the issue now, is that under that general liability and that policy they had, they gave their limit up. They said, listen, we have $1 million policy here. We give it to you. We're all done. So now if somebody sues you because that building comes down or anything like that, there's no more insurance, we have it. So the only thing that may be left is your personal umbrella you have. And all you can do is put them on notice and say, we want protection from you because it is a personal, I'm being sued personally for bodily injury and bodily injury, which should be covered under my personal umbrella. But they can come back and say, here's that line. You're acting on behalf of the corporation, not acting in your own negligence. You didn't do anything. You didn't work negligent, right. At home, okay? You were negligent as a board member of that community association. So they may or may not cover it. They have a right. They can come in and say, this is that line that comes in.
We're back to that line.
Talk
to me about the line with the HO6. Does that have any protection for you if you are sued as a board member?
Yeah. So again, it's the same thing. The HO6, everything in the HO6 is designed to cover you personally. So you go, once you go, you drive in that car in your home, in your house there, or your unit, that's your personal coverage for you, protection. That if you're sued individually, okay, as something you are negligent for because you did something wrong, let's say that you did something to your fence, you didn't maintain your fence properly, and somebody went through and drowning at your pool at your own house is one thing. But now they drown in that swimming pool that belongs to the association. It's the association's responsibility, not Robert Norland's responsibility. It's Robert Norland's responsibility. So, for example, you as a board, here's the tricky part. As a board member, okay, you could knock your next door neighbor and say, listen, I'm tired of the wind chimes going off all night long. Please get rid of them, okay? Now, they can come back, the carrier come back and say, wait a minute, here's the line. You weren't acting on the behalf or in the capacity of a board member. You were acting in the capacity of the next door neighbor.
Right.
Yeah. So there's the line again. You're just grown up next door neighbor who says, stop the wind chimes. I can't go to sleep at night. So the wind chimes are going all night long. Stop it. So again, that line goes back there again. Now, we don't decide what we can do, what we can't do. Again, it's up to either the judge or someone else to say, here's a line. And then we reserve your right. We'll say we reserve our right because we don't know the acting capacity of a board member or an individual homeowner. The line will always come into play. And that's why people get so frustrated with insurance, because that line is there. Because I can say, I act on behalf as a board member, try to do my duty to maintain the common area. And they can say, nope, you're acting as the next door neighbor who disgruntled because of the wind chimes.
Got it. Well, again, just fascinating. We come back to the importance of understanding your policy, working with your insurance agent to understand where that line is drawn. And thank you for this time that you're able to help kind of clarify all these things.